Hello everyone, Jason Bowers here, and today's video is going to be another lesson that I learned from my father. And as you've maybe seen some of the other videos, my dad taught me a lot of lessons, maybe without knowing it as I was growing up. And some of those lessons were not learned in the moment. You know, I might have been a preteen or a teenager, even better yet, an 18-year-old that knew it all. But as I get older and I raise my own child, those lessons that he tried to teach me at the time are ringing more than true. I realize every day as I interact with my child, especially when it comes to accountability and lessons learned, I'm turning into my dad. I'm turning into saying all the things that he said to me as a young person. And the frustrations that I have today, I can't even imagine the frustrations that they had to deal with raising somebody like myself. So with that being said, he said many times, when I was younger and maybe I had some chores or a task, or maybe I was just helping him with doing something around the house, in frustration because I didn't give it all of my effort, or I did an incomplete job, or my standard was obviously much lower than his. The comment of, if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. I took that as that's an old man just yelling at me for whatever reason at the time. But as I'm older, I'm going to be turning 50 this year, and reflecting back on almost a half century of life, there's a reason behind that comment, and it becomes almost a waste of time to do something not up to standard or to not do it correctly. And sometimes it comes down to not having the right knowledge or not having the right skill set to be able to do something correctly. But more times than not, when I was a teenager, it came down to laziness, just a lack of want to. I thought about, how does that relate to our financial lives and planning for the future? If I meet somebody and they've already done some work, when they feel like they've done everything that they can, and I review their situation and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of things missing, or there's some things that are just simply not done completely. A perfect example would be something like estate planning documents. I talk to somebody and ask them if they have estate planning documents in place. Oh yeah, we're all taken care of. Great. Share with me a little bit about what you have. Well, we have a will in place. I'm like, okay. And that's all that they have. And the challenge is, especially in the state of Maryland, where I do most of my practice, it's pretty simple. If you're married and you have a spouse and one of you passes away, the other one gets all your stuff. So while a will can be important, of the three estate planning pieces, it can be argued that it's probably the least important of the three when you factor in advanced medical directives and powers of attorney. And when I share those other two documents, a lot of the people who have just a will say, well, I had no idea that I really needed those two things, or I was unaware that they existed, or I made the decision not to because it didn't seem important, or it was less expensive to just get the will, or I did the will myself. That is something where you see something that they believe they're 100% covered, and they're obviously not in that situation. So today I wanted to talk about a few kind of key topics that kind of center around, if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. And number one, half-done planning can sometimes be worse than no plan at all, because a half-done plan, or an incomplete plan, or a plan that doesn't take everything into consideration, can actually create more risk by thinking that you're covered when in actuality you're not. And that's where the comprehensive nature of financial planning comes into play. It's looking at everything, not just one puzzle piece, but the entire picture. Because you want to make sure that all those puzzle pieces come together to paint the picture that you're looking to paint. Those are your short-term and your mid-term and your long-term goals. When you do partial planning, or you try to do it yourself and you feel like, yeah, I think everything should be good, it can create additional risk that wasn't there before, when you knew that you weren't covered, when you had no plan, because at least then you're aware of your situation. But when you do some partial planning, or you get a little bit of things done, and we should be good, that actually creates more risk, because it's that false sense of security. And the one thing you want to have when you're putting together that comprehensive financial plan is you want to walk away from that with a huge sense of security, that you do have everything taken care of, and that the next steps are going to be intentional and totally in line with your long-term planning. And that can be challenging sometimes, because we do want to do it ourselves, get that sense of accomplishment, maybe save a little bit of money. But I tell you what, it's if you've ever seen my "Do You Change Your Own Oil" video, there's a reason why I pay to have somebody do my own oil. So I don't enjoy doing it. I don't know how to do it, and I guarantee you, the people that I pay to do it are going to do a much better job than I do, and that gives me that peace of mind. So again, having no plan going forward can more times than not be better than having a half-done plan, because of that false sense of security. So Number two, and this is probably the one that I come across the most, is do-it-yourself investing versus true comprehensive financial planning. And investing is a piece of the puzzle, right? And it's you can do it yourself. It's never been easier to do it yourself than it is today with some of the low-cost platforms, the research that's available to everybody, and things like index funds and ETFs put people in a position where they can diversify and invest on their own and have a great long-term outlook and feel confident in that plan. But again, investing is a piece of the puzzle where comprehensive financial planning is the blueprint that ensures that every piece of the puzzle works together. And that's what you want. You want to make sure that my investments are in place and they're diversified and they're doing exactly what they want them to do and they're in their appropriate accounts and I'm saving the right amount and I'm spending the right amount and all of those good things. But that is one piece of the pie, one piece of the puzzle. You want to make sure that all the other aspects of your financial plan are also in line with your goals. Because again, if you're just thinking about investments and saving, then that half-done plan can carry more risk. I also did a video on a young person that I met that wanted to buy a house, and he's still living with his parents in his upper 20s. So in short, he had saved about $110,000 in his 401k, had about $5,000 in the bank. And he was saving a lot of money, but unfortunately it was all into his 401k. And I asked him, I was like, you told me your primary goal wasn't necessarily retirement, although that is a goal. It wasn't his primary goal. His primary goal was to buy a house and move out of his parents' house. And I said, well, if you keep doing what you're doing here in 2 to 3 years when you want to purchase that house, congratulations, you have $150,000 saved, but it's all in an account that you can't touch for 2 to 3 decades. And in that conversation, he was surprised by that because it just never crossed his mind. He was taught to save. We're taught to save into a retirement account. And by doing it all himself, he was unaware of the things that professionals are going to be aware of that could have pointed out, saying, maybe we need to diversify where we're saving so when you're ready to buy a house, you actually have assets that you can use. You want to make sure that you understand the entire blueprint, not just long-term planning, not just short-term planning, but all of the goals that you have and the steps that you need to take to achieve those goals. And while some people that I meet have done a great job of saving and accumulating wealth, without that knowledge of a professional, a lot of times it's in inappropriate accounts or it's all in a single type of account. And that can lead to more issues down the road. And some of those issues you simply can't undo. So starting early, but getting advice early, getting guidance early can really set you up for success because, again, investing is just a piece of the puzzle. The third topic that I wanted to talk about is inconsistency kills your financial momentum. And financial planning, and especially saving intentionally, is all about momentum. It's about building it into your day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month financial life, if you will. And the momentum that I'm talking about is seeing those accounts grow, seeing the impact of compounding interest and compounding growth, along with the interest of continuing to save during both good times and bad times. That consistency builds momentum and it builds great habits, those habits that you can then teach to your kids. We have to understand that we're playing the long game too many times. And my dad is guilty of this, of calling me and saying, where's the best place that I can put $10,000? I'm looking to triple it in the next year. And I'm like, well, if you find that out, let me know, because if I had that answer, my line at my office door would be a lot longer. But wealth isn't built in an instant. It's not built instantly. It's built by consistency and being consistent with your financial behaviors over time. So think about that. It's almost like developing a workout plan and going to the gym. You can't go to the gym for 3 consecutive days and eat salads for 3 consecutive days and expect to look in the mirror and see the body that you're looking to obtain. It's built with consistency over time, and you'll slowly be able to see your goals being achieved. So that momentum, that visual change in your physical self becomes that motivation to stay consistent. Well, when it comes to finances, building intentionality with your savings habits is probably the number one thing that you can do if you're just getting started out. What I mean by intentionality is saving with intention, not just pumping money into some type of an account that you read about online or into your 401k because that's the only account that you have. That's getting it halfway done. Sitting down with somebody sharing your goals and saying, based off of your goals and your current situation, you should be saving X over here, Y over here, and Z over here. That is a plan. That's intentionality. So the next piece is shortcuts in your finances can be very expensive. And we tend to find out is over the long term, every financial shortcut that we decide to take, whether it's doing it on our own or taking the cheapest route or thinking that we may know better than the people that do this for a living, every financial shortcut eventually shows up as a long-term cost. And it could be something that ends up costing you money, or it's opportunity cost. It's, had I just spent a little bit of money today and done it correctly, the opportunity that I would have had or that I would have achieved over the long term would have been much greater. One way to look at that, and I'm not a big fan of talking about rate of return because you do get on a slippery slope, because I tell clients, if we're going to work together and I'm going to manage your money, we're going to make money together and we're going to lose money together. That's just the reality of the situation. Anybody that hangs their entire practice off of beating the market or beating everybody else's rate of return, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. But I digress. When talking about the shortcuts of maybe I'm going to do it myself, or I'm going to, I choose investments based off of solely the lowest cost investment. Well, that should be a indicator of what you're going to choose, but shouldn't be the only indicator. Looking at historical performance, again, that's something that's great to look at from a research standpoint, but to have that be the tipping point of your decision-making process, there's so many other aspects to look at when choosing an appropriate portfolio for yourself. One thing that people very rarely look at when they're doing things on their own is their actual tolerance for risk. My uncle did this, so I'm going to do the same thing because it worked out for him over the last 20 years. Yeah, but he's 2.5 decades older than you, and less comfortable with risk than you probably are today. So when we take shortcuts, when we look for the quick way out, that tends to lead to long-term costs. Woulda, shoulda, coulda mindset is not something that we want to have when dealing with our finances. And finally, I want to wrap it up a little bit with discipline builds confidence. And again, the discipline is doing the right thing even when we know it's going to be painful or it's going to be inconvenient. But the confidence in your financial life comes from clarity and commitment, not luck. It's not about choosing the one or two investments that seem to explode and all of a sudden you have wealth. That's like putting your financial plan in the hands of a lottery ticket. Some people are going to be successful with that, but I tell you what, that number is so small, I don't know if I want to bet on that strategy. I'd rather have something that is consistent, that comes with clarity. With that clarity, I'm now able to be confidently committed to the plan because I understand the plan. I understand what needs to be done today and what the impact of those intentional actions are going to be long term. Getting back to the conversations with my dad, it's the reflection and clarity that I have today in those comments. If you're not going to do it right, simply don't do it at all. I understand that now. I understand why, cleaning up the yard after the dog on a consistent basis, if I only go out there and do it 70%, well, then I now have to make another trip to go get it done, or somebody else has to come behind me and waste their time doing that. And that's not necessarily the same in finances or financial planning. But the mindset is, if you're not going to get it 100%, if you're not going to give it all of your efforts, if you're not going to set a high standard for yourself, then don't do it at all. Don't waste the time. Don't waste the money. You're going to potentially create risks that are simply not there if you simply do nothing. All that being said, please don't do nothing. Put yourself in a position where you have a plan for the future, whether that future is the next 3 months, 3 years, or 30 years. You want to make sure that you have a plan. It's all about having a plan. We very rarely, if ever, will go on a simple thing like a vacation without some type of plan. We will very rarely ever make a career change without some type of plan. When our kids graduate high school or graduate college, we sit them down and say, what is your plan? But then when I sit down with some people and we talk about their finances and their future and the largest assets that they may have saved over time, and I say, what is your plan? They don't have one. So put a plan in place, sit down with somebody that can keep you from doing things halfway. So you can look back and say, wow, I'm glad I did this. Hindsight's 2020. I wish I would have known this at a younger age, but get that plan in place as soon as possible and don't do it halfway. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I look forward to chatting with you guys in the future.